Today's guest is a successful businessman and former state senator. He announced a few months ago that he is a candidate for governor of Texas, Don Huffines. We want to thank you so much for calling in, taking the time, and we know you're a really busy man, Mr. Huffines.
Appreciate being on it and letting all your listeners and viewers understand how important it is that we get new leadership in our governor's seat.
Governor Abbott has been very popular with the Republicans over the last two cycles. So what is going to be different this time?
Well, I like to say that that's really maybe not an accurate statement, Billy. I don't think he's never had an opponent in a Republican primary. 30 years as a career politician, and he's never had really a real opponent ever in 30 years.
Wow.
So, he's been popular because there wasn't anyone else to vote for or to donate to. And so now he's got a real opposition, and now he's going to be held accountable to the decisions he's made, and the lack of leadership is very obvious, and Republican primary voters are smart. They understand a failed administration, and this is what it is. It's really a fraudulent administration if you want a conservative candidate.
Right. Well, do you feel like he's made very many missteps during the pandemic? And if so, what would you kind of outline those to be?
Well, absolutely. Look, the catalyst for me to decide to run, besides the main catalyst, I should say, for me to run, happened in March of 20. We all know what happened when he shut down the state. And the Constitution, of course, doesn't give him the authority to do that. And I warned everybody on Twitter what was going to happen. And I put an op-ed in most of the major papers in Texas and begging him to open the state back up in 2 weeks after he shut it down like he promised. It was going to be a 2-week program. But no, he listened to that lying Fauci and all the know-it-alls in New York and all the know-it-alls in that deep swamp in Austin. And he put over 3 million Texans out of work in one day. That's more jobs, Billy, that we've created in the state in the last 12 years combined. And then he unilaterally decided which businesses could be open, who were the winners and losers, and excuse me, and closed tens of thousands of businesses forever were closed. And let me just say this: the worst thing he did, he closed our churches. He closed our churches over Easter. You couldn't properly bury the dead. You couldn't get baptized. You couldn't get married. You couldn't visit the sick. Then he keeps a mask mandate on us for 9 months. DeSantis did it for 6 weeks, and everybody thanked him for taking that mask mandate off. And that's like thanking a thief for bringing some of your stolen goods back. So, look, I never would have done any of that. The Constitution doesn't give me the authority to do that.
Where do you think he found the constitutional legality to actually make that edict?
He did it. He
just made it up?
Yes, sir. I mean, he could look at it and try to interpret it, the Emergency Powers Act, to include whatever he wanted it to do. And then when the Republican, and no Republican leader stood up to push back against him. No, very few anyway, in the state of Texas pushed back and said, hey, why don't you bring this to the legislature? Why don't you go to the legislature and see if you got the authority to do that? And even if they did, he wasn't going to do it. The courts aren't going to rule against the governor. They all part of the same clique.
Where do you think the legislator should have jumped in and done something?
Absolutely, but unfortunately, it's not that easy when you're not in session. It's complicated to make that happen. But what he should have never have done it. I mean, I never would have done that. I mean, look, because the lens I look through is just completely different. I'm a businessman. I don't need this job. I've got a great career. I'm gonna be governor because the job's simply not getting done. I mean, it's important to note that the differences between me and Abbott. Abbott's a career politician, 30 years in an elected office. He can't get enough of it. He's never really signed a paycheck in his life. And why he just sees things differently than I do. I want to solve the issues that affect Texas, period. That's the only reason. That's the reason I'm running, is for the love of Texas and to solve the issues. And the other big difference, I'm according to the Secretary of the Senate, I was in the Texas Senate for 4 years, from the 14 to 18, 84th and 85th sessions. I'm the only elected office holder in the history of the state of Texas that never took any money from the state. No pay, no pension, no health care, no travel reimbursements, no vouchers, no per diem, nothing. And I'm going to do the same thing as governor, because I'm not doing this because I'm looking for a new career.
Gotcha. I know we just finished up the 87th and a couple of special sessions that were pretty much not non-starters. Do you feel like the session was very successful for the citizens of Texas?
I think this is a little more conservative, certainly, than the previous sessions. And that's because of our governor, our leader. We struggle so often, every session, to get our Republican priorities into law. As you probably know, we have legislative priorities of the state Republican Party, and it's put together by tens of thousands of Republicans, and we narrow it down to 5 or 10, depends on the year. And there's 300 planks in our party platform, and we just never get them into law. And the real simple reason of that is because Abbott doesn't want them to be law. We control everything. Just keep that. The House, the Senate, the governor's office for 20 years. 20 years.
Well, if you were the governor during the 87th, how would you have pushed for the right kinds of bills?
Well, the reason we got more done this session is because Abbott knows his political career is in jeopardy. He knows I'm after him. I mean, he's moved hard as he can to the right. There's no argument there about that. And what I would have done is make sure that my legislative priorities got done at the very beginning of session. And you know what my legislative priorities are? I've got some, excuse me, just a second. Thank you. I've got 3 things I'm planning on getting done, and that's the border, property tax, and election integrity. But let's just go back to your question. I would make sure that gets done in the first 60, 90 days of the session. My legislative priorities are the Republican Party legislative priorities. I'm the actual Republican running that's going to get our stuff done. And my priorities are what the Republicans want into law.
Yeah, we've always, we're down here in Montgomery County, and we have a really strong Republican support system here. And it's always been interesting to me as a citizen in this area, this part of Texas, to work on those particular priorities, to send them forward, and then they get to the legislative sessions and very little ever seems to happen with our priorities.
That's because the governor doesn't want it to. Look, I was there, I've seen it. The governor can get really any bill done he wants, and particularly if he was a leader. I mean, I get last call as governor. I get last call on every bill that comes out of that building. Every bill except constitutional amendments. I get last call on the budget. Not only do I help them put the budget together, of course, but we get line item veto power. It's an incredible leverage, plus other leverages, other tools in the toolbox the governor has to make sure that legislation passes. And I'm saying that what you see down there is not what it appears. Right. Most of it's all just for show. It's all a hustle. And you think this committee chairman's killed this bill and this and that. That's not the case. All of that's set up in advance. And it's set up by the governor's office and what bill they want to get done. And let me tell you how this state's, we've lost more liberty in this state in the last 18 months than I thought was ever possible in 100 years. And it all happened with Republicans. It all happened with our Republican governor, who's supposed to be the leader of the Republican Party, and he's supposed to be the leader of the state of Texas. And we just don't have we just don't have any leadership right now. And that's what my campaign's about. It's leadership, no excuses.
Well, if you were going to look at the bills that we did pass, I'm just kind of curious of your opinion. What do you think was the most important bill that managed to make it through and get signed?
The heartbeat bill.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. No ifs and buts on that. I'm pro-life.
Yeah, that was a
natural death. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That was a hard fight.
Yes, it was. It was, but it could have been done 4 years ago. It could have been done 2 years ago. It could have been done 8 years ago. The reason it wasn't, and you didn't see, I'm just saying, you're just being honest. I'm not trying to keep dumping on the Abbott, but you
Mhm.
would see that the first thing I would have done as governor. I mean, I put it right out there. Abbott didn't put it as a legislative priority any year. And if
Right.
he wanted, look, same with the border. Abbott's got the border the way he wants it. If he wanted the border secure, he could have done it 7 years ago or 7 days ago.
Right. Well, I'm a strong Texan and I'm a liberty guy, and I really believe that we are losing a lot of our liberties throughout the country. And it really surprises me that in the 21st century we're losing liberty right here in the great state of Texas. And to find leaders that want to fight for that is becoming more difficult cycle after cycle. How can you, as a governor, really help better ensure that we're able to maintain the strength of the Texas spirit?
Well, I love that question. That's my campaign. Well, that's what I'm all about. And I'm going to prove to those socialists in New York and San Francisco, to that swamp in Austin, what it means to be sovereign. I can
Right.
tell you that not only the United States, but I'm going to prove to the free world what it means to be sovereign. And that's the basis of my border plan, and really my whole all the issues I'm campaigning on. I'm never asking permission from the federal government to do anything. And I remind everybody, there's three legs to the stool of our Constitution, of course, and the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And courts are only there to interpret the law, not to enforce them.
Right, exactly. Well, like I was saying, I'm a proud Texan and believe that we have specific values that are really special to Texans. How do you define Texas values?
Well, first, like I say, I'm a fifth generation Texan. I was born in Dallas, and Texas values are really, to me, a value of hard work and virtue. It's a value of individual ruggedness, individual responsibility, and making sure that we have a believer in the Almighty, and that we're not in this, that we're in this with God and with Jesus. And that's the lens I look to when I govern. Billy, is simple. I ask this rhetorical question: what is the proper role of government? What's the fundamental role of government? And I answer it the same way I think that most people in the United States could have answered for 125, 150 years before the Marxists started and the socialists really started penetrating our schools and seminaries and everything else. And that is, the fundamental role of government is always to defend your God-given liberties. Your liberties come from God and not the government. These are our natural rights. They're not a privilege. And it was a unique concept. And so that's the lens I look through. And that's why we wrote the Constitution. And the Constitution was specifically written to restrain government. And they knew that the biggest threat to our liberties was the very government they were creating.
Right. Well, I'm absolutely a strong believer in all the things you just mentioned. Spiritually and fiscally, I think it's very important that Texas gets back to being Texas again. We need to be a leader, and I think it's very important that we learn how to find the right types of candidates that want to lead again. So here's another question for you, Don. Do you believe that there were any significant irregularities in the voting procedures in Texas in 2020?
I can tell you this about election integrity and voter fraud and election fraud, is that people always cheat in elections. People have cheated in elections since there's ever been an election. And I've got a great plan to give people confidence, because I can tell you there's nothing more dangerous to our republic than people not having confidence. I mean, the foundation is to our constitutional republic is to make sure that everyone has confidence. And when that foundation starts cracking and breaking, all heck's going to break loose, and it's going to get really ugly. And the Democrats really always say, "Oh, this is voter suppression." Well, voter suppression is when millions of Texans don't think their votes are being stolen. I mean, because I hear it every day. Why? Well, why am I going to go vote? It doesn't matter. They're going to cheat us. So I've got a great plan to fix that, or to help fix that. And it's about enforcing the laws. We got these new laws on the books, which is great, and I'm all for it, but we don't have any enforcement of the laws we already have. So I'm creating a new division. It's called the Government Corruption Election Integrity Division of Law Enforcement. I'm going to insert law enforcement in between the two parties. Look, Republicans have cheated, Democrats cheat, and people cheat. So I'm going to have at least 500 individuals that will be trained specifically for this task. That's all they're going to work on is government corruption, election integrity. They'll be assigned to every county. They're going to follow the ballots. There'll be the central accounting rooms. They'll know where the software is, who owns the software, and everything like that. We'll have a new court system because you're never going to convict. A Democrat's not going to get convicted of cheating. A Republican in most of these metropolitan counties because the DAs are Democrats, the judges, the juries. So I'm having a separate court system, separate venue, separate prosecution on all this. And we're going to put people in jail.
Okay. There's no doubt that voter suppression conversations is definitely on the Democrat side to really just to kind of move the ball down the field beyond where it needs to be for conversation. But I know Texas, we really fought in the 87th to get some type of a bill passed in the Congress. In fact, the Democrats took off because they didn't have the guts to vote for anything, or they didn't even want to debate the whole issue. We did finally get something passed, and I believe the governor has signed it. Did it go far enough in your opinion?
What was the top? Abortion or election integrity?
The integrity bill that we signed?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't go far enough. I mean, the governor's the one that unilaterally changed the election laws during the last election. I mean, he didn't even go to the legislature. He just broke the law and changed them and said that people could go vote early. They could do this. They could do that. It's all against the law. He just changed them. Of course, it doesn't go far enough because he doesn't. Like I said, we don't have any enforcement. And let me just point out to your listeners that the Attorney General's office is in charge of election integrity. He's in charge of enforcing the law, and the Secretary of State is in charge of making sure the elections go off according to the law. Well, the governor appoints the Secretary of State. The governor was for 8 years, and the governor was Attorney General for 12 years. There's 4,000 people work in the Attorney General's office. When Abbott was Attorney General, he had 700 attorneys, over 700 attorneys, and he had 2 assigned to voter fraud. Let's be honest about this. He doesn't care about election security or election integrity until he knew he had a primary opponent and he was going to get some. It's not something that's ever been something that he campaigned on or cared about. I've called for a forensic third-party audit of the 2020 elections. I've been calling for audits for years. I mean, my 2018 election, when I lost in Dallas County, there was suspicions that the machines might have been manipulated, but nobody listened to us in Austin. No one cares. And those are Republicans. These are Republicans.
Right.
So, and about everybody fleeing, let me just point out the obvious on that. I mean, the Democrats left during the regular session. Remember, they ran the clock out on that same issue, same bill during the regular session. And you know what Abbott did after that? He signed 371 Democrat bills into law. 2 weeks later, he lost all of his leverage, and then he signs the budget they all voted for, so he lost all that leverage. I mean, he allowed all that to happen. They all knew it was going to happen. I mean, you heard Abbott, you heard Dave Carney, his campaign guy. Oh, we're going to have him arrested. We're going to do this and that. They didn't do anything, nothing. They didn't have him arrested, of course not, but they could. The Constitution, the state Constitution, gives the House the authority to do practically anything it wants to them. Could throw their office furniture in the yard. It could impound their vehicles. It could dock their pay. It could do anything. And of course, none of that happened, even though all the newspaper, printed that Abbott was going to arrest him. It was all staged. It was all set up in advance.
Well, I know that the Speaker of the House signed some documentation, and a lot of the conversation down here in my part of the country was, what is it taking so long? Why is it nothing is happening? All we need to do is arrest the people that aren't showing up for work. They're taking a paycheck, but they're not showing up for work. And it would be nice to know that we had people in Austin that were more concerned about the people they're supposed to serve than themselves. And I think that's really the reason that we have people trying to change leadership, especially at the level of the governor. And so Let's
Well,
go to a new topic. This is one of the topics I think you really love to talk about. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about it. You've made some great videos about this topic. So I really want to just kind of let you run wild on this topic. Illegal invasion is taking place down on the border. Do you support the current policy that we have going on down there? And if yes or no, I'd love to hear your ideas and your thoughts on how we can fix the problem.
Well, I definitely don't support the current policy. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm running. I, like most Republicans in Texas, we're just tired of the lies. We're tired, we're frustrated, we're scared, we're out of time, and we're angry. And we're tired of the broken and empty promises, either about the border, property taxes keep going up, our confidence in our election. I can go all the way down the list. It's very long. But on the border, I tell everybody this on national TV and wherever I'm at, that this is the most important election in the history of in the United States in 22, could be one of the most important elections in the history of our country. And it's simply because the federal government's never going to secure that border. And we controlled the House and the Senate in Washington, and they had the great, courageous President Trump. And the border was still porous. It was still open. And the federal government's never going to secure that border. The only chance we have of securing the border is with a courageous governor of Texas. I'm going to finish Trump's wall. I've been talking about that since I entered the campaign in May. And I'm going to spend $3.5 billion to get that done. I'm a business guy. It's a good trade. That's about a 1.5 year payback for what illegals cost us. I've had 3 trips to the border in the last 90 days, and I was on the committee in Austin, so I'm pretty familiar with it. Border Patrol saying about 1.5 million to 2 million unapprehended illegals will flood into Texas in a little over a 12-month period. They're capturing illegals from 150 different countries since the beginning of the year. They're all smuggled in by the cartels, incredibly dangerous criminal organizations. This is an invasion. I set the table for you because this is an invasion, unarguably, and however you define it. And I'm using the United States Constitution to secure the border. That's Article 1, Section 10, which clearly gives states the authority to do what they need to do to secure the border. And I'm going to engage the entire Texas military, our National Guards, 20,000. We've got great assets. Mm-hmm. And there's 25 crossings over the river. I'm going to stop all inbound commercial traffic from coming over those bridges. All the roads leading to those bridges are state roads. We have complete authority over those roads. And we're going to stop the commercial traffic for a real reason. It's not arbitrary. It's very strategic. And that's to make sure Mexico feels the economic pain. And they secure then their side of the river. We're never going to have a secure border if Mexico doesn't cooperate, and they're being a very bad neighbor. Look, I love Mexico, and it's my favorite country to travel to. They're being a bad neighbor. They're going to secure their side of the river, or they're not getting hundreds of millions and billions of dollars worth of goods into Texas. And I'm never going to ask permission from the federal government to secure our border. This is the Texas border. We're going to do whatever we need to do, and we've got the legal authority to do that. I keep begging Abbott to do that. He's been on my website. They know that. They've got the authority to do it, but they won't do it. And we've got the authority to enforce immigration law or to ignore immigration law. And if they get across the river, our guys are going to load them up and take them right back across the river.
All right.
You can do that in 30 days. I'm going to do it in 30 days, but no one's ever. 30 days. Give me 30 days. I'll do in 30 days what no one in this country has ever done.
All right, I'm gonna mark that down. Huffines can do it in 30 days.
That's the goal.
Fantastic. So I know a lot of times we're gonna shift gears here in just a second. A lot of times we find that elected officials find their way to Austin, and they find their nice little titles, and they get their nice little cushy offices, and they have their nice little sessions. And the next thing you know, their focus becomes more about re-election than it is about doing the policies and the work and protecting the liberty and life of those who put them there. Do you have any particular position on term limits?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the only senator to ever file term limit bills, both sessions. I was there. I don't think anyone filed them in the House either. I'm a big believer in the champion of term limits. I campaigned on that when I ran for the Senate. And I actually tried very hard to deliver on that. I had different ways to do it, and I will be working very hard to make sure we get term limits. I'm for term limits from the governor to a dog catcher. There's got to be an end game to all this.
Okay. Do you think the state should have a role in pre-K to 12th grade education?
I'm not sure about pre-K. I think the
Okay.
whole system needs to be adjusted and really looked at. I was a champion for school choice. I like to phrase it as education freedom and parental choice. And those are the language we need to be using now. And parental choice is huge. I'm the one that wrote and filed the education savings account bill in the Senate for that. And look, I'm a business guy, as I keep saying, because we can solve this issue with the free market. Competition always lowers the price and increases the quality of everything. And it's going to do the same thing for our government school system. It's going to be tremendous. It'll make all the schools better. It gives parents a choice. A lot of people have resources, can change zip codes and go to private school. I mean, this is a priority of the Republican Party for decades, and we need to get it done and quit talking about it.
Yes, sir. Well, there's a big issue that's really come up over the last year or two in the state of Texas specifically, and that has to do with critical race theory. Do you think there's any school system in the state of Texas that should be supporting in any way the critical race theory curriculum, or any curriculum that follows the same type of mindset?
No, absolutely not. Of course not. But let me this is Marxist philosophy. He's trying to separate us any way it can, whether it's race, income levels, your ethnic background. I mean, your language use, anything, any way Marxism. That's how Marxism works. But here's where I think the problem really starts, and it starts in our higher ed. It starts in our universities, our colleges, and these teachers are trained in these universities, and they're taught by socialists in the universities, and it's been going on a lot for decades. And that's the power of the governor, though. The main thing, one of the main powers of a Texas governor is appointments. We make thousands of appointments, including, obviously, all the board of regents for every university in the state of Texas that's a state university. I get to appoint those. You never hear anyone talking about it, but the board of regents, of course, hires the administration and the faculty. And I'm going to stop all that. I'm going to make sure that the board of regents of these universities are patriots. These are people that believe in the exceptionalism of the United States, that believe in capitalism and the beauty of it. It's freed billions of people out of poverty around the earth. These are going to be people that articulate that and make sure that everyone they're hiring also is going to communicate that. And we're going to stop this indoctrination of our youngsters, and that'll help very quickly with our government school system.
Yes, sir. We're getting close to running out of time, but I've got one more question I'd really like you to kind of discuss with us, because I think it's a huge topic, especially here in Texas, and that has to do with tax reform, county appraisal districts, and things of that nature. There's a lot of conversation. I know some bills were written. They never made it out of committee in reference to how we could get a better handle on what I call abusive appraisal districts in the state of Texas. What are your thoughts on how we can get a handle on curbing what I consider overtaxation through the way the appraisal process works in Texas?
Well, I think I've got a good plan to not have to worry about that in about 8 years. And that's we're not going to have an appraisal district. And after that, we'll have to find a new job. So I plan on phasing out property taxes, and this is very doable. And I know it sounds whimsical and political rhetoric, but it's not. It's really not. This is a math problem. It's been a priority of the Republican Party for a long time. And look, Texans are tired of renting their homes from the government. This is a bad tax, period. It's a really bad tax. I just point out this, that almost every piece of real estate in Texas, and really the nation, is owned by the government. When I say that, people think, well, what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means they have a first lien on it. and the rent
Right.
and you rent it from them, and the rent just goes up and up, whether it's your office building, your apartments, your land, your ranch, your farm, your home, and it's a bad tax. So look, I'm going to phase it out over 8 years. It might take 10, but I think we can do it now with the revenues the way they are for the state. In 8 years, everyone's going to get a chance to vote on it. It's going to be a constitutional amendment when I get it out of the legislature, so everybody can weigh in on it. When I cut the head off the snake, it'll stay dead. And no income tax, of course, it's not necessary. Texas brings in a lot of money every year, tremendous sums. I mean, 125 billion, a year. And our revenues really go up every year from 6 to 8% revenue gain every year in the state. So if we just don't spend all that money and we cap it really low, we can use all that extra revenue to buy down property tax, and I'll move some of it over to sales tax, and then keep all the school districts and everybody fully funded. We're not going to change any of the funding formulas. And then all the money from Austin then will come back down to all the political subdivisions that are using property tax. It sounds complicated, but it's really not.
It's just math, right?
Yes, sir. It's what it is.
Great. Well, we are so grateful that you joined us today. I always like to allow the guest a minute at the end to just anything I didn't ask that you'd like to share with our listeners, just give you the opportunity to close out and share your heart a little bit. And so feel free to take another 60 seconds and tell them what we need to know.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that time. Look, this is going to be a new day for Texas. It's a new day for the United States. Texas is the tip of the spear. We're finally going to get our swagger back in Texas. We're going to make, like I said earlier, we're going to prove to the world what it means to be sovereign. And I want everybody to be sure and go to my website and my Facebook and all my social media, and it's donhuffines.com. It's spelled Huffines. donhuffines.com. Our greatest days are coming. And I tell you, it's going to happen. This is our time. There's no cavalry coming over the hill. There's no rescue squads coming to restore our liberties. You are it. You are the 911. When we made the 911 call, and all of y'all are going to have to answer it. This is our time. I love Texas, and God bless you very much.
Thank you, Don, and we'll be keeping up with your campaign, and God bless you for stepping in the fight. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show.
Thank you for tuning in today. It was a great conversation we had with Don Huffines, and we'll be following up with other candidates over the next few weeks, and we look forward to inviting you to the next Meet the Candidate show. Have a great day.
Views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and ownership of MCPLive.tv.